The planet is heating up.
The oceans are becoming filled with plastic.
Change starts now. Change starts now.
We're on a countdown
To zero waste. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast. Here's your host, Laura Nash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zero Waste Countdown podcast and radio show. Today, we're speaking with the co-hosts of a podcast called Love Zero Waste. It's Malin, Leth and Evelina Lundqvist. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having us.
This is so great talking to you guys. I love talking to other podcasts, and yours is really a nice one. And I think like very positive vibes and stuff are coming from it. So it's really a pleasure to have you guys on. And Malin is actually talking to us from Sweden, right?
Yeah. I'm based in southern parts of Sweden, close to Copenhagen in Denmark, though.
Nice. That's awesome. So I've never been to that part of the world, so I can't wait to find out more about what's going on there in terms of the environment and what you guys are doing. And then Evelina is from Austria, which I have been to. Oh my gosh, I was in Graz and I absolutely loved it. Beautiful city. Yeah. So what part of what part of Austria are you in?
Right now I'm outside Vienna. We're based outside Vienna. It's 1 hour west of Vienna, but I actually used to live in Graz. So it's like my second home. I love Graz.
Nice. It's so funny. I just remember like everybody would stop on the side of the road and there'd be no cars coming for miles and nobody would cross the street no matter what unless the light turned and told the people to cross the street. Like everyone was just so good at following the rules. I was like, oh, I don't understand why we're not crossing the street. Cause like here, if you just go. So I want to know all about your show. So I don't know who wants to go first, but if you want to tell us what your show is about, why it started, that sort of thing. So give us the rundown on the Love Zero Waste show.
Evelina, give us the history.
Yeah. Actually, we started about 2.5 years ago now, which is crazy. And Malin contacted me out of the blue about 3 years ago, and we started discussing different projects, just bouncing back and forth. That we just thought we should do something together, and then we decided to meet and start the podcast. So that basically the first time we ever met, we started working together on the podcast. And since then, we've done about 30 plus episodes, and we're about to start season 4 soon. So we're super excited about that. And on the show, we talk about zero waste from a large scale change perspective. So we talk to all kinds of people from all across the planet. We talk to educators, to activists, entrepreneurs, investors, designers, architects, all kinds of people that are working to create large scale change in the sphere of zero waste.
Nice. So it's mostly like a macro scale kind of thing, right? Of zero waste. Do you focus on kind of like the little aspects of maybe what's in your home or like personal stuff as well?
Yeah, we talk about that sometimes. It's a very, very important part of the zero waste movement, the zero waste lifestyle kind of aspects. But what we are really passionate about is the more the corporate side, the organization side, the policy making side of zero waste. And of course, also this part of the zero waste movement is built up by individuals. So it's always important to come back to the things that you can do yourself in your home or where you work or at university. So it's kind of a bit of a back and forth between those two aspects, the individual's responsibility and the systems change perspective. But I think on the show, you definitely hear more about the systems change perspective than you do about the individual responsibility that you can do as a stuff that you can do in your home.
So that's kind of interesting. So did you guys meet online and then kind of get together and decide to work together and then meet in person?
Yeah, like we never met actually before I contacted Evelina. Like I've heard of Evelina remotely, as she is amazing. And then I reached out to her and say, well, hi, you're an awesome person. We should do something together. and then we
And who
started to
can say no
brainstorm.
then?
and then and then Evelina went to Sweden because I think you had a project, you were working in a project in Sweden as well. So then you
Mm.
went by, and then we stopped in my apartment and recorded the first episode. It was like, yeah, going from reaching out online to like, hi, I'm a stranger, we should do something, to meeting up in the living room and recording. Like, amazing. So
Yeah.
awesome.
That is very awesome. Yeah. And it seems like you guys have known each other for years. Like it seems like you have very good like on-air vibes together, you know? It's nice.
Yeah, and I think we complement each other in a really nice way as well, also with our competence areas. I think it's and also kind of areas of interest. So it's a very good match of personalities as well, I think, and competences.
Yeah,
Okay, so
really.
let's do like background and interests then. So how about Evelina, we start with you. So what is your background and interest? And then Malin, if you want to let us know yours, and then we can kind of get more of an idea of how you guys work together.
Okay, that's awesome. So I've been a social entrepreneur, a person who tries to solve environmental social challenges with entrepreneurial means. I've been in that sphere for the last, it's crazy, but it's almost 20 years. I've run different youth organizations. I've worked in the field of zero waste. We did a project a couple of years ago called Zero Waste Jam, where we experimented making jams from surplus fruits before they would be thrown away. So I have a
Yeah.
lot of kind of experience in the social entrepreneurship field. And now I work very broadly with sustainable development, as really from anti-racism to zero waste and how those are connected. So I would say that I'm a generalist in a sense, but that I'm spending a lot of my waking hours at the moment on zero waste topics.
Nice. Yeah, it's an important topic, and you know maybe we should get into later how COVID's affected it. But Malin, let's hear about your background a little bit.
Yeah, so my background is I've been working a lot with different international NGOs. Been working mainly from Sweden, but also in other countries in mainly in Southeast Asia. I've also been working with corporates, and the things that have been in common in the different positions I've had have been within how business practices affect local communities, natural resource extraction, how we could apply strategic CSR or other sustainable principles to actually make the transitions. So looking at how it affects communities, I've worked with urban development, but also from a rights perspective or a rights-based approach, and how we could find a way of businesses doing practices that could be approved by society instead of the other way around, that society will be highly affected by wasteful practices. And I've been working a lot with process based structures within industries. It could be natural resource intensive industries, but it could also be from the service sector. So I have the background of collaboration between civil society, the governmental sector, and the private sector, all for making a shift within business practices, and then also from within corporates to make the shift of transforming towards better practices. And now in Sweden as well, I'm working at the national level for market transformation, especially within plastics. So I'm more from business, societal background, so to speak.
Wow, that's amazing. You guys sound like you have amazing careers and that you do a lot of important work in a lot of different places, it seems. So that's really cool to hear all about this. And then, Malin, so you said you were working in Sweden. So can you tell us what Sweden is like for those of us who have never been in terms of zero waste? So do people care a lot about the environment there? Is there like, are the streets really clean? Like, what is the environmental scene like to you in Sweden?
Well, I would say that the general knowledge and the general awareness of sustainability would be rather high, I would say. There are, at an individual perspective or an individual level, and from entrepreneurial initiatives, there are zero waste stores, there are communities that are working towards less wasteful practices and better utilization of resources or reusing. There are many startups within that sphere as well. However, looking at how clean our streets are and so forth, we still have, of course, a big problem with human behavior aspects of wasteful practices. So it would be littering. There was a study last year, 2020, where they surveyed how much litter during 1 week only in Sweden that was discarded on the streets in June. And that was the equivalent of 60 tons of trash, only for people littering in Sweden.
Wow.
Which is crazy. So, I mean, even though, and there are also many surveys investigating or studying how much we are aware of the problem and how much action we take, or being mindful of better actions. And there's such a large gap between how much our awareness is, or how much awareness we do have, and then what we actually make, what action we take. So we know more than what we do, or we understand more than what we do.
And then I would assume that the Baltic Sea is pretty clean because it's far north, and I think these countries seem to really take care of that stuff. Do you think that's true at all? That it's a
No.
no?
Well, there are
Oh,
many.
no.
No, no. There are many problems with the Baltic Sea. Baltic Sea is actually one of the water bodies with least oxygen in the sea floor or the ocean floor. So there are many problems related to that. One of them being pollution runoff from industries nearby. We have so many countries connected by the Baltic Sea, and any runoff from those countries are highly affecting the biodiversity and the livableness of livability of the ocean there. But then also looking at the west coast of the Nordics, then we have actually one of Europe's most littered stretches of beaches or coastal stretches. So it's so easy to think of Sweden or Nordic countries to be super clean, or that we don't have any marine plastic pollution or such. Yeah, it's a very, very big problem. So as I said, one of the coastal stretches on the west coast is one of Europe's most littered coastlines.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that at all. And we're going to get to Austria with Evelina in a second, but I had one more question, Malin. So in Sweden, do you guys incinerate a lot of the trash, or is it landfills, or it's mostly
It's incinerate?
incineration?
Yeah. Almost half of all plastic collected for recycling goes for waste to energy.
Oh, it's waste to energy. That's good, I think. Yeah, because then at least you're using
it's
it.
incinerated. Yeah, we still have the highly toxic ashes left. So, and then we actually export it to Norway because we can't handle it here. So, it's
you export the trash, or you export the power?
The ashes from incinerating.
See, ashes is the biggest problem, because how do you transport them without blowing away, and you don't know if they're toxic and that sort of thing. So
yeah, well, and they are highly toxic. And then in Norway, it's so Evelina and I explored the practices there, and I suppose there are many sites with incineration plants that do export it to one island in Norway, where they actually capture all the ashes and then dig them deep down.
Yeah. So Evelina, let's hear from you a little bit more. So you are in Austria, and I know I said that I love the country when I was there. Are you originally Austrian, or were you from
not
Sweden?
at all. No, I'm actually from Sweden also.
Yeah.
But I'm married to an Austrian guy, and we moved here a long time ago. So I've been in Austria for a long time, but I work in Sweden and in Austria. So I tend, when there's not a pandemic, I tend to travel between the two countries to work together with my clients.
Nice. Yeah, the pandemic has really it's weird not to travel, and it's kind of sad. And so I've actually been watching Rick Steves Europe. I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy.
No.
But if you have a travel bug like me and you're in North America, Rick Steves Europe is a really cool series about, he just goes through different towns in Europe and stuff and highlights the cultures and the people there. And so I get my little travel bug on my couch watching that show sometimes until we can travel again. Yeah. So for those who are listening who also have a travel bug, walk us through Austria a little bit, your experience there, and the environmental community and zero waste, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yes, I would say it's quite similar to Sweden in a way. It's a very clean country here also. The local communities are very strong here, and it's a very strong culture of taking care of your home, taking care of your house, taking care of your garden. There are so many like garden communities, garden cities that really put this in the foreground. How pretty, how picturesque the different villages and cities are, and I think that corresponds very well with the image that people have of Austria in their minds. That is very like this flowers and house, as it's very clean and pretty, I would say. But I think it's very similar to Sweden in the sense of that people have a lot of knowledge of what they should do, but that they're not necessarily acting on it. Waste generation rates are just as in Sweden, it's increasing all the time here. It's basically out of any kind of control. The environmental footprint is also rather overwhelming in this country. What I find a bit different from Sweden is, though, when it comes to the food culture, that is a very, very strong. They've done a few campaigns here from the government and also local initiatives to cut down on food waste, and they have been rather successful, and they are very present in shops, and people here are also buying much more locally produced foods. It's much easier to have access to a farmer's market. Just in the small village where we live, there's a farmer's market once a week, and it's much more accessible to buy locally produced food. And also when you go into any store, they have these the government stickers on them with the campaign that is much more present in a way here. But otherwise I would say it's quite similar to Sweden, the situation. It's not very sustainable. But what is interesting is that the Green Party has had a lot of success from time to time in this country. So they are rather strong in pushing for transforming the traffic situation, for example, turning roads into roads where you would have cars in the city to change to bikes instead. And so there is a lot of stuff happening, but Austria is also a very, very conservative country. So things tend to take a lot of time here, which is something that I like about Sweden, that I feel that it's a bit faster sometimes when it comes to innovation, to startups, that the conservative side of Austria is sometimes slowing things down unusually, or like it to too much.
Yeah, I remember you're saying biking. I remember I fell on my bike because I went into one of the tram
Oh yeah, in
lanes.
Graz you have to be very careful about that.
Yeah, it was funny because they have so many trams, and they're like streetcars basically.
Yeah.
I guess they're electric probably, and so they have these grooves into the streets. And so yeah, if you get your bike tire in one of those,
Yeah, you have to be very careful when biking in Graz. It happened to me also. You can
really,
really hurt yourself.
it probably happens to most people, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they were everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did seem like a beautiful country, and I love that there are so many farmers markets. Those are just really the best thing. I worry about how people eat, and COVID really opened my eyes to this, because we have a politician here, our health minister, who's saying, oh well, vitamin D, there's no real evidence for that, it's like fake news kind of thing, and a lot of us are like, oh my gosh, no, vitamin D is really, really good for you, and you should be getting vitamin D, right? And we're not saying it's going to like cure COVID. We're just saying it's healthy for you. And if you're getting COVID, you want to be healthy when you get it, right? So I think that people eating at farmers markets and just trying to eat as many like fruits, veggies, grains, like proteins, all these things, just everything that's healthy for you right now, I think is a good way of living while we're going through this, just stay healthy.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing that is there are quite a few packaging-free, zero waste and packaging-free grocery stores in Austria. So the whole
Nice.
German-speaking area, including Germany and Switzerland, it's quite easily to access that kind of stores. And in Sweden, that's just starting. There are a few ones that are kind of trying to find their place in the market, but here it's really quite common here.
That's good. Malin, are there are there a lot of farmers markets too? Like, I would think there's less farming in Sweden. I don't know.
There is, but I don't know from Austria. I just went there once when I was a kid, so I don't have any references more than Evelina's life experience. Um, but from a Swedish perspective, there is farmer markets in like larger cities, and then there are a lot of urban farming initiatives. In Malmö only, there are several. That are raising or starting these communities. I just heard from two of them last week that they already have this kind of waiting list for volunteers to join because the interest has been so high. So having a waiting list for volunteers is quite nice for starting up your new business. So I would say, well, I think most people maybe don't have access to farmers markets or to locally produced food. They live closer to conventional supermarkets, I would say. But there are still, of course, a lot of communities with urban farming or at least community-based farming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that I can talk to you guys about these two different countries and kind of get like a picture, a perspective of how that stuff is going. But I guess enough about satisfying my travel bug. So thank you. I can't wait again. But I mean, I guess my carbon footprint is really, really low right now, which is kind of a nice thing. But let's go back to your show a little bit. So you started it a couple years ago and you focus on sort of like the bigger aspects and business and that sort of thing. So do you have future plans for it, or are you working on something coming up in the future?
Yeah, we have many future plans for both the coming season, but also like from a multi-year perspective. When we first started out, the first thing Evelina did was to map up what we will produce for the coming 2.5 years. So that was what she knew back then. So what we are looking at now would be to find a plan for the coming, let's say, 3 years maybe. So we are having a bunch of ideas, and Evelina is up already testing a lot of them in practice to see what could be working from a longer perspective. But we are diving deeper into business transformation um, to almost like going for exemplifying what the transition would mean in practice.
Yeah, I think that's really what we're trying to. It's a bit of an experimentation from our side right now, because there are so many podcasts that are super good at interviewing people about the change and the personal responsibility side of zero waste sustainable development, even if you want to take it from a bit of a broader perspective. So we really want to try to dig deeper into this transformation process that Malin is describing. So we're actually experimenting a bit in the background right now with different formats on how to support business in this transformation towards zero waste. And also, as we've met you on Clubhouse also, Laura, that's also a good platform for kind of experimenting a bit with different formats to reach people and to kind of dig deeper into these topics of large scale transformation.
Yeah, I love Clubhouse because people just chip in with like the best stuff. Somebody, you don't know them and they come in the audience and they put their hand up and then they start saying all these cool things. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like such a good part of the conversation. Like, thanks for joining, and you can really connect with people on there. So yeah, if you're on Clubhouse, definitely look up Evelina and Malin because they're on there. And so I'll try to include your Clubhouse handles when I do the write up. So you can see that because they host some really good talks if you're on there.
Yeah, and I think now we're doing a plan now basically for the coming year of people to interview, and I think the more we get into the topic, the more the more interesting it gets. Also, the more difficult it is also to narrow it down to these are the topics that we want to do. And we did a list the other week of these are the topics that we think are super interesting. And then we wrote a presentation of ourselves for Instagram, for our Instagram account. And there we wrote completely different ideas. And it's like, oh my God, how are we going to get all of these interesting people that we want to talk to, from urban mining to reducing food waste to business zero waste business development? How are we going to fit all that? Yeah, so it's really tricky. The more we understand, the more we get to know people in this field, the trickier it gets for us to select who are we actually going to talk to on the show.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's like almost endless, the amount of people you can talk to about zero waste. Because when I started it, I did a list. I'm like, I don't know if there's enough topics for a show. Like, this was like almost 4 years ago. So I started writing down the topics like on my phone, in that notepad thing, so I could just open it whenever I thought of a topic. And I had like 40 of them, and like in the first day or something, and I was like, okay, there's definitely enough. Like, if I can think of that many topics just very quickly. There's a lot of people. Do you guys know Lynn Frisinger from Swedish Stockings?
No,
Yeah, we know Swedish Stockings. We have had
Yeah.
some contact with them.
But we've been in contact with them, and they keep popping up in my social media feed constantly. So I get a reminder like every week, like, oh, maybe we should talk to them. Maybe we should talk to them.
Yeah, they have good marketing. They really they do a good job on that. But they came on my show early, like maybe the first or second year, a long time ago. And oh my goodness, like she's got it down. Like, they get their fishing nets from the ocean, those ghost nets, right? So fishermen go out, they find these ghost nets, they bring them back, they put them through a process to take the polyamide out, then they make nylons, or like, those stockings that people wear on their legs, and they're really nice ones. I actually have a few pairs, and they're above and beyond what you'd get at the drugstore or the grocery store. Like, these all of them have lasted forever, for a few years. So I'm really impressed with the quality. But anyway, when they do get a hole in them, or you're done with them, then you send them in and you can mail them, and they recycle them into, well, it used to be these plastic barrels for grease, like grease waste from restaurants. So it's kind of like this crazy thing. And I remember her saying, well, that's not really like circular, because that's going to be their end of use. So I think she was still thinking about doing something else. And so they were making furniture out of this stuff at one point. So I think they're always kind of like innovating. But yeah, a few years ago, that's what they're doing. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I don't know any companies who have like put so much thought and effort into really making that product continue after life. It was really great.
It is really great, and I like that it's a product that is such a, it's like a commodity kind of, and it's something that you would use every day. Unless, I mean, now it's a pandemic, so I'm not using any stockings, just comfortable yoga pants.
That and lipstick, eh? I always wonder about lipstick. Like, companies, like, is anyone wearing lipstick still?
Exactly. It's going to explode now when people get vaccines. Everybody's going to go for stockings and lipsticks.
I actually read that the sales of skincare, it has increased, but the sales of makeup did decrease during the pandemic.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep, I can see that. I actually figured out how to take care of my skin really well. There's a certain type of plant actually that grows here that's really good for your skin. So I've been like steaming with that. Cleared up my skin completely. And then I've just been using like coconut oil for a moisturizer. Whereas before I was always using like those products that you get at the drugstore. And I don't think any of them really were working very well. So yeah, I feel like over the pandemic, I did kind of fix my skin, which was a nice kind of part that I didn't really think of before. But yeah, I don't wear makeup very much. If I'm not going out. And yeah, at first I'd put on lipstick and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah, that's the feeling that we're all going to have in a few months, I guess. I think that it would be super interesting if there are any companies listening to this that are interested in doing this transformation, from going from conventional business model, conventional business, and not caring so much maybe about zero waste, or trying to figure out what it's all about in a business development context. I think we would love to get in contact with you if you are in that process, to learn more about your adventures going from conventional to zero waste, or from slightly zero waste to deep into the zero waste and circular economy topic, how that affects your or how that impacts your business model, and maybe even talk to you on the show. We're super eager to get deeper into that topic.
And what's the best way that we can find you? So you're on Instagram, right?
Yep.
Yes. You can find us on Love Zero Waste on Instagram, or our website, which is lovezerowaste.biz.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much for joining us. That was Malin Leth. She is calling in from Sweden, and Evelina Lundqvist, and she's talking to us today from Austria. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so
Laura.
much for having us.
Change starts now.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast.